Great. So what's new in the world of EVs? June 14, I changed this slide.
Oh, good.
Um, we can go ahead and move forward. I took the host slides out. So yeah, our usual schedule is to just do introductions around and discuss any chapter business. We have a short presentation today and opportunity for open questions or discussion topics. A little bit of news, and at the very end, I was supposed to bring up the topic. Hi, Brad. I was supposed to bring
Right.
up the topic of possible picnic next month, and maybe we can kind of discuss public locations. Since Bernie hasn't joined, we can't really ask Bernie today. Um, and that's about it. I think we want to all close out pretty sharp at noon, so I'll watch the schedule. Um, we're having some fire prevention work done here this afternoon, so everybody's got a little something to do. Next slide. Um, Normally we have meeting etiquette related to not touching anything at Thunderstruck. So um, I just left this slide in so we'd know that we should put that back in the future. And welcome to our new participant. Next slide, please. So for today, I was thinking, please tell us, who are you and what are you looking forward to driving in the future? Uh,
Uh,
I was thinking a little futuristic option. I'll start if you like. I was looking around at my name is Sonia, and I act as treasurer this year in the group. And I was looking around at all the different cars, and while it's likely that I might choose another kind of comfy, longer distance hatchback in the future, like a Hyundai Ioniq 5 or something. I'm also really excited about what I think of as perhaps slightly more limiting cars like the Slate truck, where I could do some brush hauling. And I have many personas, so I'm also curious about the Aptera. So now that's three things. Um, David, do you want to go?
Yeah, that's an easy question for me. Most questions are more difficult. Um, my whole emphasis in the future is the Aptera, and I probably said it a million times that I think it's a whole different technological change from what we've been experiencing. I have two batteries on my house now, and I've been able to, if I set the lower limit on them as it goes down in the summertime here, I'm basically independent with those two batteries. I'm not taking anything from the grid. Most days, I take like a tenth of a kilowatt at most, or zero. And that kind of works into the Aptera with the aspect of the solar, and I'm kind of curious of whether in my position, I don't drive a lot, but in my position, I could potentially drive that thing year long without ever charging it or taking any energy from the grid. Because if they do get, they say you can get in California up to 40 miles range per day with just the solar. I don't believe that entirely. Um, I think that even if you got 25 or so per day, that for people that commute less than 20 or 25 miles a day, that means they theoretically could drive it to work, park it, and get enough energy that they would never ever pay for gasoline again or electricity to charge the car. And that's simply, amazing. There's a lot of things going on with Aptera. I probably should say the same thing that this Aptera Owners Club guy says, is that I'm not promoting it. I don't know anything about financing aspect of that whole thing. But if you look at it, it is a totally different concept. It's based on efficiency. And you mentioned trucks and stuff, and the whole way people have been looking at things. Well, if I want 300 miles and I want to go to 400-mile range, I just put a bigger battery in it, and that just adds weight and decreases the efficiency. Theoretically, the one that they're first going to come out with has about a 400-mile range. So, but the techniques in building it are really fascinating too. I think that's just something that's totally different. So for me, it's real easy. The Aptera, I think, is whether it happens or not,
I
I
hope
don't
it
know.
does.
I've heard some pretty negative things, but then I've heard counterpoints to those. And some people are even saying, well, if you could get an early one and then they went out of business, you'd be able to sell it for way more than you paid for, which is a concept of how to make money, I guess. But it's pretty crazy. They are planning this cross country trip this summer, and if that actually they don't have any problems with that vehicle, that's a pretty will be a pretty amazing trip and I think a real positive to the potential that will actually come out with it. It all gets done in all these cars. You talk about new cars and everything, but it all comes down to money, financing, and being able to get it into production in enough quantity that they then have enough money coming in that they can continue to increase the profits on it, or at least increase the money to continue building it. So it's kind of a crapshoot. My estimate is probably, I don't know, 50% that it'll actually happen, and fairly I got a significant amount of money invested in it, so I have my, of course, John would say, well, you're always negative about everything anyway. And that's true. I mean, I do take sort of a negative view on a lot of things, but I try to base it on, actual discussions and looking at it. And they have this new round of financing, and they still have 300 offers, entry points for people that want to get involved. And it was basically they would if you invested $10,000, you would get $10,000 off of your
Mm,
vehicle, which that's a whole new concept. They keep coming up with these interesting concepts. So I
hmm.
keep an eye on that. I hope you also get to drive one or get one because I think
Yeah.
it's a pretty amazing car.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be excited and just like any car, I would expect it to be, a little bit like when you said it might not be 40 miles, I understand that because there are seasons and temperature changes and all sorts of things to consider, but you can do so much with that. You can do
Oh
so much.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. John Pomerly.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I'm John, and I am actually the secret vice president at the moment. Don't feel like I do a lot, but I help some behind the scenes, and I do also when we have our meeting at Thunderstruck, I tend to host there and get things ready. But it's a great question. I get really excited about the Chevy Bolt coming back. We own a Bolt now. Ellen owns a Bolt, my daughter, and it's just fun to think of kind of a long-lasting brand name like that just coming back and with much greater performance. I hope they hold some of the things that made the Bolt nice before because it's a very popular car. You know, we're also seeing a number of people that we know purchase used Bolts
Mm,
because they're so popular, and it's just really was a shame that they dropped it. But I know that that was some internal thing going on with Chevy. Um, the other one, yeah, definitely like you, Dave, the Aptera, super interesting, totally other type of vehicle that I'm looking at. And then of course the Slate pickup. It reminds me a little bit of our truck Val, just kind of small and not pretentious and very, minimal. It doesn't even have a screen. You stick your little iPhone on the dash to have any kind of a navigation or anything. That's what it seems like. So it's, very minimal, which I think is really cool. I like the idea. Sometimes I think of getting back to a vehicle that just has basically a switch.
and
You go.
roll the window down.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
That's all.
Yeah, and those are all kind of like different purpose-built cars, so I'm kind of curious, if we need to own one in our neighborhood or,
Right,
you know,
right.
how to do that.
Yeah.
Um, Russ, you wanted to?
I'm Russ Wigglesworth from Petaluma. I have a 2015 Kia Soul that's still going 90 miles every time I charge it, but I am waiting for my Aptera as well, and I
Well, a
won't
lot
add to that.
secret Aptera lovers. I love it. Ellen?
Hey everyone, I'm Ellen. I'm in Santa Rosa. Um, and I am an admirer of the Rivian vehicles, and I'm really excited to see the R2 and the R3 come out. And I would love to test drive them and maybe someday own one. That's my secret little dream car, but we'll see. So I'm looking ahead to that.
Also a great choice. Mike?
Morning, everybody. Mike Newell from Santa Rosa. Yeah, I'm pretty set with vehicles on the West Coast, but I think in the next year we might become bi-coastal, and so thinking about what kind of EV I would keep on the East Coast, and then thinking through, what's it going to mean if the car sits for 3 months or
Mm.
something like that, undriven. So probably still would be that the kind of car like people talk like a Bolt, or we own two Kias, so we've been kind of happy with those. But yeah, I just started to think about how we'd manage vehicles if we're taking a big break from driving either one on here in California or in North Carolina.
Cecilia?
Julia, I am in Ukiah, and I guess I'm looking forward, maybe not entirely, maybe reluctantly, um, to the Aptera because it's a very cute car and it's solar and seems okay.
Seems okay. Are you concerned there might not be as much automation in it, or?
I'm not a fan of the yoke,
Oh,
or
not a fan of the yoke.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if they made that an option, you'd go with a regular wheel. Okay. Rabbit?
Yes. Uh, so for a long time, I was a huge fan of the Bolt and any kind of um, EV SUV because I wanted to have like, a trailer. And I've actually seen one of those recently. By the way, sorry, Rabbit, they, them pronouns based in Oakland, but I'm living in an EV. So wherever I am parked is where I live. Um, right. So I am interested in EVs that you can live in, and it's a whole different scenario because one would love to be able to charge the EV with your own solar. That would be so nice. There are a couple of I don't have brands for you, but there are a couple of places that are making mobile homes or, larger things that you that you could build out. And um, so sorry, there's car alarms in this place where I'm staying. Yeah, I'd love to see one of those that has a little bit more of a range. I'm in a Ford Transit, e-Transit, so I have a tiny range for, you know, for long traveling thing. But yeah, I don't know the name of the makers of those, and they're super rare and hard to find because that's not what RV people think of.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'll leave it there.
Well, the last time we were at Thunderstruck, I saw one of those Smith trucks, John, and I think of them as a Frito-Lay truck, I guess. And it had the flatbed, and I thought, a tiny house could go on the back of that. But then you're talking about so much weight and kind of a shorter range to start, right? So you definitely would, you'd have to go from campground to campground pretty short distances. Yeah.
I would love to just say with slightly over 100-mile range in California, at least, I have not yet been more than 100 miles from a fast charger. It just,
Great.
it's not that. So every time I drive, I charge. That's part of my day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a different way of doing things. I look for a good place to camp and there needs to be a charger near it. That's how it just changes the way you think about the world.
Yep. Yep. That's great. Brad, can you speak to us? Did the audio work out?
Yeah,
Great.
thanks, Sonia. I got the audio to work on this computer. Excuse me. I'm Brad. I'm a little, maybe more than a little shaggier than I normally am. I've actually had pneumonia over the past few weeks. Spent a little bit of time in the hospital, and I'm still recovering, trying to wean myself off the oxygen. So that's been an experience lately.
Wow.
Yeah. My summer adventure, so to speak.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm still driving a 2004 Honda Civic Hybrid. It's got like 195,000 miles or so. I've been hesitating, delaying on taking it in for a major service. It needs new tires and an oil change, and like various cabin air filters and stuff like that. So it's just, I don't know, one of those things that I guess when I think about what I'm looking forward to driving in terms of an EV, if I had a more stable living situation where I had access to an EV charger either at work or at home, or preferably both, then yeah, I might think more seriously about like I don't know, 2018 or newer Nissan Leaf. Uh, but
Yeah.
haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. Well, get better, Brad. It's that sounds like a tough slog. I know my aunt just went through it too. I don't know if pneumonia is going around or what the deal is. So I think that's all of us. If we move back to the slides, I set up a few little topics for conversation that are kind of continuation of the theme here. Great. So I don't know that we have any chapter business. It's summertime and a couple travelers, but I will mention real quick that, we still have that nice fund within our treasury and some ideas for, paying some of that money forward. So that might be something to discuss in, maybe 2 months from now. I know things keep getting kind of pushed forward, but if we have a picnic, it may not be a good picnic conversation. Who knows? We can incubate it. The intro to the NBEAA, we're a chapter of the Electric Vehicle Association, which you can find at myeva.org. And the Electric Vehicle Association mission is to educate and advocate for the rapid adoption of electric vehicles. So we keep a website, mostly Cecilia keeps a website going at nbeaa.org. And we have, some activity on Facebook and send out a few emails a month to keep you updated on the meetings themselves. And then we also keep the NBEAA Discuss Google group for interim things. And yes, thank you so much, Cecilia, for all that you do on that site. I think our next slide is some of our other Google groups, or actually our previous meeting. Okay, so last month we had a California legislation update by Woody Hastings, and I found that really interesting. He's done it maybe 3 years in a row now. But this year might be his most interesting yet because there's a lot of different legislation that gets proposed, and the Climate Center is tracking just one of them this year. The Altadena representative, I think his name is Harabedian. He's probably got his hands full because he's in Altadena. He has sponsored this bill, AB 740, which talks about, I think that's the one that talks about um, uh, advocating for virtual power plants. And there was another one about bidirectional charging. So there's a couple of very specific things that the Climate Center is working on to allow for more strategy around virtual power plants, and then also to advocate for cars being sold in California to be bidirectional. And if you support those things, you can always talk to your state legislators at this point. I don't think that there were any updates. I clicked through to the US or state government site that Woody had just to see if there were updates, and there weren't yet. So that presentation is on our site, and the PDF has lots of good links in it. Our communications, as I mentioned, our club communications are 3 emails a month. Our discuss group works really great kind of mid-month or for little questions. And then anything that you send to news will get considered for addition into our presentation slides. So anyone can send anything to the news email that you see here. Feel free. All right, the next one. I'll make up what I think is coming up too. I think in terms of events, I didn't quite create a slide yet, but save the date in October. Sonoma Clean Power does want to do a National Drive Electric Month event, and we had been kind of meeting monthly, and I think somehow those fell off because we were pretty far in advance. But in the prior conversations, we did decide that it might be really great to focus in on buying used EVs. There's lots of great used EVs out there, and we were even thinking that used car dealers could bring EVs to that event, and Brad was going to work on whether or not they might be amenable to that. So there's an event update for you without a slide. And then moving on to news. One of the things that I noticed this month that was kind of interesting, I think we've probably discussed these numbers before, it was just visually presented differently, is the per capita EV sales. We all know that California has been kind of leading the way here, but I hadn't realized that Washington, Hawaii, Oregon, and Colorado are in the top 5 when you consider per capita sales. And then the other states that follow that are Nevada, New Jersey, Arizona, Vermont, and DC. So to me, I looked at, wow, it's more Western states oriented. I kind of thought it might be Eastern Seaboard a little more, although New Jersey is pretty high. And so, we had a quick discussion about this news item. It looks like in California, a lot of cars get sold, but then they get taken off registration. And so Dom was kind of speculating that maybe some EVs are being taken out of commission. And while that could happen to some extent, I was just wondering if people are more fluid in terms of moving geographically, and definitely moving to Nevada. That's what I'm hearing. Maybe Texas. So cars are getting unregistered in California somehow and then maybe re-registered. That was one idea of why that was happening. So there is a Western states tilt to EV ownership. And from my perspective, I thought state incentives must play a part. You can see that Georgia is well ahead of South Carolina and Alabama, and Georgia had 10 years ago, they had a great state rebate. And so I'm sure that's how they got a big bump. And then Florida always surprises me with its adoption rates. They seem to do well. Does anything else jump out at people?
Well, just Sonia, I know this is really probably simple for people, but the fact that it's per capita is just really interesting to me because per capita means, how many cars per a certain number of people. And when I see a map like that, it's hard for me to think per capita because I think, oh, this is just because there's a lot of people in California. Well, no, it's like
Yeah.
there could be, Nevada could be the state where, 1 in 10 people bought it and they'd be, really dark.
Yep.
It's really interesting to me that that's a per capita thing. And I don't know, it's just something to note.
Well, when you were saying that, I was thinking about New York and how New York has so much public transit. Most of its population is in New York City. You don't need a car. And so any kind of adoption rate in New York kind of like means more possibly. So it does mean different things in different places, I suppose. Brad?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, thanks, Sonia. I threw a comment in the chat because I wasn't sure if you were saying that in California, the excuse me, the new vehicle market for EVs is stronger than the used vehicle market, and that's what you were taking away from the registration stuff that you mentioned. If that's true, and I'm not sure if that's what you were saying.
Yeah, I think actually what Dominic and others were trying to do, if I recall the email thread, was that they were trying to take another data set and just compare it to see if this all made sense to them, which I think is great. And it was kind of like a data set based on registrations. And somehow the registration information was going downward in California, in kind of or wasn't matching up to all the sales. And Dominic had a speculation like, does that mean that lots of cars are being taken off the road somehow? Like, so say in the last 10 years, we've sold X number of EVs in California, but they're not all registered anymore. And so that's why we kind of talked about, well, maybe there's just more people move a lot or cars move a lot. Like, so, they get sold by CarMax and they get moved out of the state or something like that. So
Okay.
there's just a lot of
Yeah.
fluidity.
Yeah, no, I know a little bit about how the used vehicle market works because I've worked a very little bit with some used vehicle dealers, mostly in Santa Rosa. But so and I haven't seen the data that you're talking about. Uh, but because I know that the new vehicle market for EVs in California is very strong. I don't know what it is last month, but I remember a few months ago, we were saying that about 25%, about a quarter of new vehicle sales in California were electric vehicles.
Mhm.
But that may not translate directly to the used vehicle market, so that when people sell their new EVs, there may not be as strong a market in California for used electric vehicles. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is that electricity prices in California, most of California, there are plenty of exceptions, but they can be very, very high compared to places like Texas,
Mhm.
just in terms of the charges per kilowatt hour. So I don't know how that affects the used vehicle market for electric vehicles in California as compared to the new vehicle market for EVs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess, we'll have to watch electricity prices, just keeping the theme on the future, which is kind of just fun. But some of the information is not that fun. Like, electricity prices, are they going up or down from here? And then gas prices, that would affect things too, I would assume. Um, and there's a lot of pressures on gas prices as well right now. So yeah, per capita, this is kind of interesting. I think we're ready for the next slide though. I didn't miss anyone, did I? So the Chevy Bolt reconfirmed. I don't have full ownership of all the information about the new Bolt, so feel free to join in. But what I learned from this particular article is that the journalist did think that GM has remained pretty steadfast in their commitment to EV production overall, that they've had good uptake on the Chevy Equinox, which is priced at a really good price point. I saw an Equinox a couple days ago and keep getting reminded it's a pretty big car. I mean, for me, it seems it's a pretty good sized car, so there's a lot of room for the Bolt to come in at a smaller size. They're supposed to be starting the assembly in later 2025. And as such, they're presumed available in early 2026, even though they're calling this a 2027 model year. So that seems pretty soon. The price is not announced, so there was some assumption it would be around $30,000 and about 300 miles of range, which sounds like what John was saying. And it will be built on the Ultium platform, where I understand the older Bolts were not on the Ultium platform. So this is kind of like standardizing how these are all getting assembled. I have one other slide. The next one is on the Bolt as well. I tried to include a few interior pictures because they tell a lot, like what the choices are right now. It seems like there was that trend toward full minimalism, and now we're kind of moving back a little bit, and you get like, the heat and air conditioning physical knobs, some physical knobs on the left side. I guess maybe someone could chime in and say whether or not that was always there. And then, the dash cluster plus the screen, instead of like having that all be one big combo screen or something like that. But what I was surprised, I didn't bother to show the picture, but what I was surprised is that they included a picture of CCS on this. And I wasn't sure if it was just because it was a concept car that they were taking pictures of, but they didn't specifically say they were going to come out with a NACS port on this car, but other cars are coming out with NACS. So I don't know, what does everyone think about whether or not it's going to have NACS by the time it comes out?
I'm kind of guessing it will have next, but who knows?
Yeah, I would wait for that because it seems like it would.
Well, I was going to guess it was going to be CCS.
Oh, were you? Okay, one of those two for sure.
Yeah, one of them. But
Has anyone heard whether they're planning on making it qualify for the $7,500 federal credit?
Wow, I guess if you think about how Chevy Bolts are built and how they have the capacity to build the batteries in the US and the car in the US, why not? But that's all up in the air right now as to whether or not that will continue, that program will continue. So maybe they're not putting a lot of emphasis on it. I'm not sure. I have noticed a lot of newer cars. I mean, maybe I'm looking at closeout cars like the VW ID4 and the 2026 Kia Niro EV, which is kind of an ending out model year or something like that. These are all inclusive of pretty good size rebates, both rebates from the manufacturer and then also from the dealer. And so it does seem like when a car does not qualify for a tax credit, it's qualifying in other ways to bring the price down. So anything else on the Bolt before we move on? Oh, one other thing I read in the article that I thought was interesting is that the journalist said that GM has done a really good job with these, inexpensive interiors, he's calling them. And I haven't like absorbed like sitting in an Equinox right now or anything like that, but he thinks they're doing really great, in terms of like this is a comfortable car. And has anyone tried out an Equinox or a Blazer? So they'll have a few.
Yeah, I think
Um,
looking at Cecilia's comment, John, didn't you find out that it will have a greater than 5 kilowatt charging rate? I think, John, did you do some research on that?
Um, the it's supposed to be something like 150, I think.
Kilowatt? Wow.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
that's the new standard. Because
Ah, great.
let's look at the next car. The next car is a little further along and has some oh, not this one. Okay, it's the one after this. Sorry. One of the cars I reviewed had 150 kilowatt. So the Bud E concept. So this is going further out into the future, I think. The ID Buzz, we're starting to see a small number of those cars. I think they're around $60,000. So if they brought the price down, maybe we'd see even more. But the ID Buzz is starting to sell in California, and they're already talking about bringing in a smaller, less expensive version of the ID Buzz. Um, and they mentioned that this one was pretty lined up with a very popular car in Europe built by Zeekr called the Mix. So the Zeekr Mix is available in a lot of European locations, I guess, and China. And this is a kind of a concept car, and I thought it was interesting that it looks like a lot of other compact SUVs. It's almost Scion-like, and I thought this one might be pretty popular as well. Although some direct competition, I would think, in some other boxy car uh, styles. Um,
It's
any
a good
comments?
looking car. I like how it looks.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I haven't seen it before, so it's fun to see.
Yeah, they might do some nice two-tone colors because they do
Mm.
those on the ID Buzz, so that would be
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
Um, the ID Buzz has some like kind of weekend camper kind of options, it seems like to me, whereas this would be smaller, but um, yeah, both would be kind of fun.
I'm curious why they put a grill on the front that looks like a traditional gas car, and I don't know if it's an open grill or if that's just a design and a flat surface, but it's just interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if they were going to go with the flat surface design. So I've noticed a lot of cars have that solid mass in the front is starting to look very blocky to me. Uh, in a tall car like that, maybe they thought it needed more design.
Yeah.
So the next one I think is a little bit more near term. Yeah, okay. So the BZ. So we haven't talked a lot about the Toyota BZ4X. When it came out, the BZ4X was kind of underwhelming, I think, and so we didn't spend a lot of time discussing it. You can get a BZ4X today in Santa Rosa. There's quite a few of them. But this is the 2027 BZ, and it's a kind of a newer update, a refresh, and it's solving a lot of the kind of limitations of the prior one. They've got a bunch of different drivetrains. The 74.7 kilowatt hour battery gives you between 278 and 314 miles, depending on the trim that you choose. And then they do have a smaller battery that'll give you 236 miles. The comment on this one was that somehow, compared to the prior model year, they had made it markedly more efficient, or maybe they had kind of unrestricted some restriction in the battery range to just kind of get more miles accounted for. And I thought, wow, there's a lot kind of under the hood that you don't get to know, like did they just do what everyone else is doing, or did they do something a little more aggressive? But this is the one that did have NACS for sure, and it had 150 kilowatt charging, which the Kia EV6s now, I think Mike can help us. Those are pretty high, like 350 or something. But 150 was kind of like, my older Model 3 kind of you can get quite a bit of range pretty quickly with 150 kilowatt. That seems to be kind of a new standard. That's why I thought you might be right about the Bolt also being at 150 kilowatt. I think I did an interior picture on the BZ as well. Yeah, so they said that they kind of modeled this one after the newer Camrys and Priuses they're making. They put in a 14-inch touchscreen. It has a 1500-watt AC outlet, which I love that kind of practicality. And should be ready like second half of 2025 means like 2 weeks. You should be able to get this in 2 weeks. So I do think that like between the Bolt announcement and the BZ announcement, maybe these are going to be pretty big cars. And so one thing that I speculated on was, why is the Honda Prologue selling so well? And is it because, people want to stay inside the brand that they love? And so if people love a Toyota brand, are they going to run out and get this car? And, will it just sell a lot right away? I'm not sure if there are other factors, but I don't think the average person's like slicing and dicing the battery chemistry, the kilowatt hours, stuff like that. So, how do people feel about like checking out the Toyota BZ? Is there any like kind of reluctance based on the fact that they haven't been into EVs before, or haven't built them before, or do you think like, oh, they'll do fine?
I definitely have that kind of reluctance, I must say. That's why I'm reluctant about the prologue too. But
Got it.
I know people seem to love it, like you said.
Yeah, well, the Prologue is supposed to be a Chevy Blazer that's kind of
Oh, yeah,
rebadged, but this one,
that's true.
will truly be a Toyota.
Hmm.
Brad?
Yeah, I was going to say it's interesting that Honda and Toyota were so early in terms of hybrid vehicles. With the Honda Civic Hybrid starting in 2003, and I think before that there was even the Honda Insight. I think Zeno has one of those,
Hmm.
and the Toyota Prius. Geez, I mean that started in what, 99 or something like that. So they were very early into hybrid vehicles, but they've been much later into full electric vehicles. So it's kind of the, I don't know, push and pull, or
Hmm.
competition between the different automakers in terms of which one invests resources into various technologies that are new.
Yep. Yeah. Well, one thing I recall about Toyota is that, their CEO and founder, I think his name was Abe Toyota. He passed away recently, and he was one of their most reluctant, kind of full EV people. So I wasn't sure if uh, this would kind of mean a little bit of a change in their attitude. Now, generally speaking, there seems to be a lot more interest in plug-in hybrid build out, but these cycles are so slow that GM seems to be continuing with their EV strategy, and uh, people can't manufacturers can't pivot so quickly and go, oh, I was building an EV for the California market, and now I wish I were building a plug-in hybrid instead or something. Um, so I'm sorry I didn't pull forward some slides. I think we did the R2 before. Um, Maybe we covered the R2 a couple months ago or something, but I feel like the R2 could be one of those big impact cars in the next year. But I think the next slides I tried to pull together some speculative lists.
So John and I put together a couple of slides here about the some of you may have seen this, but there's a fast charging company called ChargeNet that has kind of recently in the last couple of years come on the scene in, the Sonoma County area. And we just decided to go check them out actually yesterday. This one is located at all of the ones in our area are located at Taco Bell parking lots. Um, and they have kind of a unique, interesting business idea behind them. So we wanted to just share a little bit about that. Oh yeah, so this one is right just south of Highway 12 off of Stony Point Road, in that kind of shopping center parking lot area there with a huge solar panel array above it. Um, and Dad, feel free to jump in anytime. We're going to do this kind of tag team this, but
Okay.
my understanding is that their kind of motivation behind their kind of business idea is to really pair, what do they call them? Like, kind of fast food restaurants with charging and really kind of turning their parking lots, they said, into profit centers in a more sustainable way that is, both sustainable and economical for the business. Um, and so it's kind of an interesting business model that John and I have been looking into. So yeah, at this location, they had 6 fast chargers that had both the CCS and CHAdeMO chargers available. And the cool thing that drew our attention is that they charge 44 cents a kilowatt hour, which to me for a fast charger is very inexpensive. I've been seeing like in the 60 cent, range, 64, 66 at other, bigger brand ch fast chargers. So that was a big interesting draw. We loved the shade at this location. It's kind of what we dream of at a fast charger is having some shade, in a bathroom and a restaurant nearby. Um, yeah, did you want to jump in and say anything, Dad?
Well, just sure. It was kind of fun. We looked around a bit. I counted solar panels and tried to make an estimate, but I think it's a 70 kilowatt array, or something like that. And there's two of them. You can see one in the foreground and one in the background. Um, Evidently, the model is also to help the solar offset costs for the partner, like Taco Bell. So and they also have a battery backup set up and to the right of the frame of this main picture. There's several high voltage and big units sitting there, and which we were surprised that some of the switches on them were actually accessible to the public. So anyone could come by and just pull the main plug. I don't know what the deal is with that, if they are working on how to keep that secure. But the point being is that there's a big battery backup of some kind there. They publish on the app. It's kind of cool on your phone. You can see how many kilowatts are being produced at any given time in the day. So it's just fun to see. I don't know. To me, I like fun things like that, even though they may not be that useful. But and I don't know, they have the tritium charger unit that they're using is, I think it's like, I was looking at this, Ellen, and I'm not sure, but I think the company is kind of going through some problems, like being sold or dissolved or something. But uh, one of the issues is that for a Bolt specifically, they found out that the CCS is difficult to get started. So we found, and they found that you have to lift up on the charging handle for 60 seconds while you get started,
Yeah.
which is kind of bizarre.
But we
But
did it and we were successful with that,
we're
so that
successful,
method.
yeah. And so it has a very simple app, and you set it up, your charging thing, your credit card, just similar to others, and they take a deposit off a prepay off of your credit card, and then they refund the rest when you're done. Seemed like
One,
a little bit much.
yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I was going to add one unique thing about this station also is, as you can see in the two photos there, they had this little box that was a plastic box that had, Tesla adapters right in that box that you could just take off and use. So that was kind of unique. I had never really seen that at a fast charger before. Um, Unfortunately, the box, the little latches on it were broken, so it looked like, they needed a little better security on the box or something. But um, anyway, I thought that was kind of unique. And the positioning of the chargers was kind of varied. As you can see, some are in one position and another one in a perpendicular position. So it allows for, depending on where your charge port is, kind of variability with access, which I think I appreciate that sort of thinking for, making it accessible for all vehicles, which I got the feeling they were really trying to do. Um, yeah, and I think this location I saw on PlugShare, the very first successful charging entry was in January this year. So I don't know if exactly when they were put in, but fairly recently, these chargers have been put in. And oh, I don't know if John mentioned this, but they have this thing called Taco Tuesday where you can get I forget, it's a 10% discount on charging if you buy a taco. Or is that right? Or
I
Cecilia, could you go back to the last slide? Let me make sure I get this right. Um,
recall if it's because when you buy, but
oh yeah, 10% discount on Taco Tuesdays. So, and in the future, they're p planning to do more collaboration with the restaurant where you get like you pay for food and charging and there's different discounts, but they don't quite have that set up yet. But I thought that was kind of creative. I like the creative thinking at this location.
yeah, yeah.
I wonder if we should do like a meetup on a Tuesday there or something.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Um, I also appreciate there's a little bit of like, trust in the community that they have this, set up kind of open. I mean, I guess they'll live and learn. But that they're offering adapters too. That's kind of unique.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they're not secured in any way, so someone could walk off with them.
I know. But
David?
This is Rabbit here. I've been traveling around and charging in, various places. And one of the things I noticed is there's a very different sense of community if you're at a charger that's in a rural area versus like a city. Um, some city chargers, it's kind of brutal, like the way that people, cut each other off to get into the charger. But some places, I have like a long, heartfelt conversation about, owning an EV, and it is a place of connection, actually. So I would imagine those, offering a adapter like that would go very differently depending on what kind of a community setting it's in.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
agree. Yeah, we find a lot of fun at the long distance, the charge places outside of cities, or while we're traveling, there's quite a bit of camaraderie and fun talk there, and I agree with you.
definitely.
David, you had your hand up?
Yeah, are they going to integrate this back to the 50s and 60s where they had servers with on roller skates and stuff and your little
They
plug
should.
thing on your car? I mean, that'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it? I mean, you could
Sure.
plug your charger in and you could sit there and eat, and then while you're eating, you could get your car charged up, and then they bring the stuff for you. And everybody's so lazy these days. I mean, you get on your app and you order what you want, they bring it out. Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
I
I'd
don't know, just
particularly like to see you on the skates, Dave.
yeah, me too, but I'd probably kill myself. I actually used to roller skate, but at these ages, it'd probably take me 5 years to recuperate if I fell.
Right.
So
Yeah.
not a good idea.
I like that idea. It also made me think if they had like a big, outdoor movie screen, that
Yeah,
people could sit and eat and watch an outdoor movie together. So that'd be
that's
really
good.
fun.
I like that.
Uh, I had a couple of comments about the business model and the fast food price point. I used to work in commercial real estate for a little bit, and to me, I love seeing something that looks like it would just work economically because that means it would roll out faster. And like Ellen said, the parking lot itself is not a profit center yet. And, you get to add another lease to, this land that you're trying to make money off of. And you get to shade the parking lot, which is kind of, and put, photovoltaic on it, which is all great. But I am kind of surprised that they chose Taco Bell because Taco Bell is probably like the lower fast food price point. I mean, you think about like an In-N-Out or a Shake Shack probably having almost too much popularity to be a good fit. But I'm wondering, what's the fast food that's like, you know, um,
Hmm.
maybe a tiny bit higher price point, just given who buys EVs now. But the opportunity is, who gets to see this? Everyone who eats at Taco Bell, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. We were wondering that too. Why Taco Bell? But
Yeah. Well, one of the things that it happens for me with this is that it's a little odd setting, but I think in between cities where you might have a place to stop, a rest stop, and a charge station, and a restaurant, and a place to do fun games or whatever, and walk the dog, and having everything kind of like some truck stops, like that truck stop that you went to, Alan. She went to a truck stop that had everything, including an electric charge station, a restaurant, a little store, a dog park,
they
and
had showers even.
yeah. I mean, just how about th this idea? I think in the right location could really draw essentially all of the EV drivers on the road and have a kind of multifaceted commercial operation going on.
A rabbit, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I didn't want to do the wrong protocol by just jumping in, but also I wondered if you folks have talked about peer-to-peer charging networks. I've seen, Europe has them. Like so basically just, hey, you can come and plug in at my house and, pay me this much. So it'd be super slow charging. But in terms of infrastructure, I feel like that would really expand people's access to electric vehicles. Have you guys talked about that as a group?
I think when you say that, I think about how people had started out listing their homes on PlugShare, and kind of I haven't seen that as much on PlugShare anymore now that infrastructure is a little bit more. But maybe in rural areas, you might still find people's homes listed on PlugShare, and it would be more casual, like in what I'd seen in the past was in my neighborhood, it looked like people were like just kind of offering for free if you get into a jam, come over here and plug in. Um, I don't know if anyone else has anything kind of more common, but unfortunately, my guess is that as the infrastructure builds, the casual stuff kind of goes away to some extent.
Yeah, I really love this idea, Rabbit, and I haven't, talked about it in the group much, but recently we've had two friends, just make this or are making this switch to driving electric, and they are not currently able to charge at their home very easily. And so John and I have thought about, opening up our home to them if they need, uh, because we only charge like once or twice a week, and obviously our charger's just sitting there. So I think it could be cool, especially within like communities or like friend groups, to have that, kind of a shared charging station opportunity. I think, yeah, especially on a smaller scale, that could be very doable, and I really like that idea.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Yeah. Brad, you had a comment back on ChargeNet?
Yeah, I was just going to share some of my observations about the location of the Taco Bell chargers. So in the previous slide, it talked about that this company, ChargeNet, does them at, I guess, a bunch of franchise Taco Bells in Santa Rosa and Rohnert Park. But this particular location, the one at Stony Point Road and Sebastopol Road, so, and maybe John and Ellen can be more specific, but if I remember correctly, the Taco Bell is kind of at that corner of Sebastopol and Stony Point, which is, I mean, there's a big parking lot at that shopping center, and that particular corner is by those two roads. So it's kind of the least used portion of the parking lot in the entire shopping center. I mean, there's
Right.
like a Ross there. There's a I don't know. I think there's a what's it, a Food Max. Like there's probably a ton, maybe 10 or 15 different small businesses there, like a Skechers shoe store. There's 20 different suites in that shopping center. So I don't know how many of the employees have electric vehicles because they're all pretty what I would think of as low wage businesses. I mean they're all retail businesses. And so I don't know how much the chargers will be used in that particular location, but there are some aspects of the siting that are pretty good.
I'm really curious about if, chargers show up, will people buy lower cost used EVs and know that they can charge there? Like, to your point, Brad, I think there are actually a lot of apartment complexes behind that Food Max. And so, um, I don't know, we've talked to people during Earth Days and things like that who say, I live in an apartment building and I'm not sure where I would charge. And, you know, um, if I were, somebody who had that kind of situation and I knew a half block away I could get a charge, that might shift the difference. So hopefully that'll make a difference for somebody. Yeah. Should we move to the next one? Did you have another one, Ellen? Or okay, we have open discussion. Was there like a screen that I had some current and future top EVs?
I think it comes later. Yeah,
Yeah, it's this one. So I defer to the group, but whatever you guys want to talk about. But the one thing that I did tee up, if you're open to it, was, if we look at like what's being sold right now, Brad was mentioning that in California we've got like 25% sales. The uh, uh, local EV sales, kind of where they're at as of 2024, and then like where would they be at even at the end of 2025 or the middle of 2026, like very near term future. It could shift quite a bit given two or three very popular models coming in. So what I noticed about this top 10 list here is that it doesn't quite, have the EV6 on it. It doesn't have the Leaf on it. It doesn't have the Rivian R1T. And it also doesn't have the EV9, which I'm seeing a lot more of now. Um, did I see in chat, did you have a list of something more local, Cecilia?
Yeah, I finally finished out. I did a presentation, and was it or before or before that, to the first half of 2023 for the population, um, and finally finished that out. So we have the data for the local counties through the end of 2023, and new EV sales through 2024 on there for folks who want to check it out.
Oh, cool. So Cecilia's got the link in the chat, and we've got data on our site, which is kind of cool. Yeah. And also maybe relevant to this conversation, when you look at previous years California sales, things get kind of interesting. I'm seeing the ID4 move in and out of the list. And the Ionic 5 moving up. So what I thought would be kind of interesting, I don't know how to exactly to set this up, but you know, we know kind of what's been selling. We know we've been selling at a 25% rate in California. There are a lot of different factors, including economic and political factors that might affect that going forward. But does everyone feel like the number's going to flatline or go up from here?
Number?
The percentage share of EVs sold in California, it's at 25%. I'll start. I think it'll go to 30. I feel like it'll go to 30, regardless of political change. I mean, I don't know if the state can really afford to offer anything new that would be better. So I guess what I'm thinking is there are a lot of interesting cars across a lot of different types of models, and so many more people are really comfortable with EVs. They know in their neighborhood of a few, and people have ridden in several, even if they don't have one yet, and so I kind of feel like we'll get to 30, something like that. Does anyone else have a thought about that?
Kind of
Well,
personally think it might really depend on what happens with these incentives and the 7,500 and the 4,000. Because I know that for people I talk with, that's a big determiner for or a big motivator or,
Mhm.
detractor in what they're deciding. So I think it'll go up and then kind of to be determined what
Goes
happens.
around from there.
I don't know. I'm
Well,
curious.
part of what you said, Ellen, might be an opportunity. Do you think that people aren't as aware that, like, say, a Kia, which is not built in the US and isn't currently qualifying for the $7,500 tax credit, it looks like you're getting 7,500 to 8,000 off from the manufacturer on like an EV6. Do you think people don't know about that?
I think they don't, and I often forget about that too, to be honest. But
Right, right. Yeah.
I do wonder though what'll happen to that if it goes away federally. Will people still will business, car manufacturers continue offering that instead of federally? I don't know, or will they totally drop
They might
theirs?
not because they wouldn't need to compete, but at the same time, I feel like we might have a little bit of economic uncertainty and they might have
Yeah.
to reduce their prices. I don't know. That's
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, but it is a good thing to remember about the companies offering that instead
yeah.
of, yeah.
David, what's your opinion on it?
Uh, I wanted to give a shout out before I forget to both John and Ellen for sending out that I think it was the two different things on EV myths.
Hmm.
I kind of glanced through those and I think in line with what we're talking about here, those are the kinds of things that really need to get out. And both of those were excellent because I mean they really bring up some really good points of why you should have an electric vehicle. And I don't think a lot of people understand. The general public just doesn't pay attention. So if they had access to those and had some time to read through them, they might be more inclined to buy an EV, even if it's somewhat more expensive. I think with the rebates and everything, it seems to me from what just looking at financial data and stuff, I'm just guessing here, but I think that manufacturers are probably going to adjust to all of that. And like you were talking about, is they may offer their own, not only their own incentives, but they're obviously looking for ways to reduce the cost of building the EVs. And that's one of the things. I'll get back to the Aptera. There was a discussion, I think, on one of the websites about why, if the EV incentives go away, why Aptera actually it might be an advantage to them, which sounds sort of crazy, but because it was a three-wheel vehicle, it's not actually eligible. So I've already, if I ever get one, I'm just figuring I have to pay full price for it because there just won't be any incentives. But
Mhm.
um, if you look at that vehicle and then you look at the advantages and you look at the solar and all that kind of stuff. And again, it ties back to what John and Ellen sent out about the advantages. I think people, if they're knowledgeable, are willing to spend more money, even if they don't match up with gas cars. But I think that the division is slowly coming together. So there's just my sister is a perfect example. I used to talk to her about EVs for a number of years, and she just was not interested in doing that. But she recently purchased a used Mach E Mustang, which on this chart's I guess number three, and she can't say enough about that. And she like thinks it's her baby and takes care of it. And she when she goes out with friends of hers, she always talks about it. So I think that is increasing. More people have them, more people talk about them, and so I think I agree with you. I think the trend is upward, even with some of these other hassles going on. But
Yeah, yeah. We didn't talk about how there is some federal subsidy for manufacturing the batteries themselves. And so it gets hard maybe for like, manufacturers who have other choices, like they could, I don't know if Ford or GM could make other choices and like, reduce the manufacturing of their EVs. But generally, it seems like there's enough choice out there now. And they'd be giving up a big chunk of the market if they went away from it. Brad?
Yeah, I guess I don't think of the particular models of EVs in terms of the number of electric vehicles in like Sonoma County or the North Bay or even California. Um, but that California Energy Commission website that I shared in the chat a while ago, maybe an hour ago or something like that, has a breakdown not just of all the light duty registered vehicles in California. There's almost 29.4 million in California. About 1.9 million of those are considered zero emission vehicles. But you can actually on that website also break it down by county vehicle registration data. So I can throw another link in the chat. Um, but in Sonoma County, I think there's something like 415,000 or so registered light duty vehicles, and light duty is based on the weight of the vehicle. Um, and I think it's something like 20,000 of those, maybe a little less, are considered zero emission vehicles in that category. But yeah, I can throw the link in the chat. I also threw a link to the Regional Climate Protection Agency's article from November of 2021 about the county's efforts to encourage EV adoption, because their goal was 100,000 registered EVs by 2030. Obviously, we're not there yet. And they wrote a little bit about that in terms of what it would take to get to that number. And I mean, we're heading in the right direction, but there's still quite a lot of
So,
room to go.
Brad, I just wanted to point out that Cecilia's done the EV Growth Locally page on NBEAA.org with the county breakdowns going back 3 years. So that's kind of cool. If you scroll down that page a ways, you'll notice Marin County and alphabetically going down. After Solano County, you get to Sonoma County, and I'm looking at 2024 EV models. And thanks for the graphs, Cecilia. You can kind of see, I think, 3-4 years ago, we were talking about how healthy it might be if Tesla sales kind of adjusted downward a little bit. And you can kind of see that adjustment downward as some other EV models are adjusting upward. Certainly, I thought that Sonoma County might have.
Would you like to share that? Screen?
Yeah, I'll share the screen because I'll zoom into what I'm. Let's see. Is everyone seeing my screen?
Yep.
Great. So I'm going to scroll up just to give you context. This is the page that Cecilia worked on, and I'll go up to the state to start. Here. Make California. So if we look at California going from 2022 and then down to 2023 and then 2024, you can see that the Model Y and 3 remain in top position, but the third and fourth cars actually change out. We had the Wrangler and the Bolt in 2023, and then we have the Ioniq 5 and the Mustang Mach-E in 2024. So we're seeing these other cars kind of come up a bit. The number 3 car went from 13,531 to 17,028. So I don't know, part of wanting the percentage of EVs to be higher over time means that, if people are choosing Teslas less, they need to choose something else more. And so what else are they going to choose? But they've got a lot of choices here. And so coming down to Sonoma County, I thought I'm going to pick on Sonoma, but I mean, we could look at Mendocino too, since we have Mendocino representation. But I thought it would be kind of interesting to think about, like, are there some unique tastes that people have in specific cars that would start to show up a little more? So far, we're kind of seeing things similarly to the state. Let's see. You've got the Mach-E and the Ioniq 5 still, but the Prologue was maybe adopted early in Sonoma County. And then we've got the F-150 Lightning, the BZ4X, the ID4, and then the R1S. I hadn't realized that the R1S was so much more popular than the R1T. But this gives us kind of an idea of what's been going on last year. Cecilia, when you put these numbers together, was there anything else that you wanted to kind of, like, did something jump out at you?
I think you talked about like other EV models coming up a bit in relation to Tesla's models. But I think the thing that was more interesting to me was in the charging, which is towards the top of the page.
I'm
And
gonna zoom on up there.
yeah, so I think for a while, was it Lake County didn't have any public level 2 charging stations. I think they got a few last year. So that there's that little, it's like a flat line until it's just the very end, and it like pops up just a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of slow. And then this is I was just checking to see what's second to last. That one, Mendocino. Okay. Mendocino pops up pretty good.
So the state is a little bit confusing since it started off as quarterly reports, and then it switches to semi-annual, and then it's just jumps to like a random month. But there was looks like a big increase in chargers last year over the previous year. And I'm like, my speculation is, some of the some funding from the federal funds for the for charging, and also just more EVs and more demand for charging.
Wow, this is great. What tool did you use for the graphics?
This is a Billboard is a is a JavaScript library for displaying charts, but it's a it was a little bit of yeah, what it's using.
To work to get it together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's structures for the data. Like most of the work
Mhm.
was in
Mhm.
pulling the data together in a database to present for the chart.
Got it. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Cool. So, yeah, back to California.
Oh, and one more thing also.
Uh-huh.
So I was noticing in 2023, we went from 3 hydrogen models in California to just 2.
Oh,
Now that's at the bottom of the page, I believe, about the hydrogen
okay.
cars.
I'll zoom down.
But then last year it went up to 3 again. But Honda switched out their clarity for the CRV apparently.
Oh, gotcha.
So that exists. But if you look at from 2022 to 2023, there was a an increase in the number of I believe there's an increase. It wasn't very much, but
Mhm.
it's less than like less than a third
Wow.
um for 2024.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, so the clarity disappeared for a year, or they skipped a model year because maybe the way they refreshed their car or something, and who knows? That's funny. Um, Not too many places to get charged up with your fuel cell EV, but yeah, so if we skip back to, I'll stop sharing. If we skip back to, let me stop sharing. No, stop sharing. Forgot how Zoom works. Um, I think what I did was I put one other slide up, Cecilia, that was like kind of just a list of the speculative, like, who would jump into the top 10. Um, and what will the North Bay love in 2026, I guess. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. And certainly I feel like Aptera and Slate might be in the same position where we may or may not see these made. We're hopeful. But I feel like the Chevy Bolt and the BZ and the R2 are very likely coming right around the corner here. And, certainly there could be a lot more prologues sold, um, and maybe more VW ID buzzes or something like that. People seem more confident and comfortable with Hyundais and Kias, and those lineups seem really great right now. Um, and these all seem big enough that they could supplant some of the current top 10. Um, did I miss anything? I guess that would be my first question.
Maybe, the Ionic 5 seems to be coming up in a lot of areas.
Yeah, I think it's in the top 10 already, but it would be the likely one to come up higher, I guess. I don't know that the Mustang Mach-E is going to do that great going forward. It's like, well, I guess it's kind of like the is there a refresh of the Mach-E coming out? Like, because I think it's only like 240 miles or something. Seems like there should be a list of like features that an EV should have and going forward, and it would be like, that 150 kilowatt supercharging capability and a certain size battery and things like that.
How about the Tello truck?
Oh yeah.
That one really seems it's a lot more money than the Slate, but it's I kind of agree with John. I think when he was talking about the Slate, I just kind of like the minimum kind of stuff, but that that gets into the price thing. There might be more people for the slate, but on the other end, the Tello seems to be really quite just a cute little truck. I'd love to drive one of those around.
Yeah, really like kind of like the VW van that was the truck version of it. If it comes in inexpensively, it could be really popular, you'd think. Brad, you had a thought on it too?
Yeah, excuse me. I threw another link to the California Energy Commission data on light duty vehicle population for zero emission vehicles. I don't know if you guys want me to share my screen about that, because I could do that. I can't figure out a way. I tried to take a screenshot of the Sonoma County data and throw it into the chat, but I couldn't get the chat to do a picture. So I
Yeah, I
think
don't
the
know.
only option for sharing a picture or an image is screen sharing.
Yeah, I think chat is just text-based unless there's an extra feature on it that I don't know. Just text and reactions, it looks like.
Yeah, so I threw a link. I don't know if anyone checked out the California Energy Commission data on light duty vehicle population. But if you, the other option is I could try and share my screen and just go over that data and that website.
Let me see. I can share it if you want. If,
Oh, sure.
if you don't mind. Let's see. Yeah, you want to talk us through it?
Yeah. So this is the data, and they separate them if you scroll down into basically two categories: the zero emission vehicle population, and this is for California for the entire state. So there's
Mhm.
about 1.9 million in that category. And then the non-zero emission vehicle population, there's like 27.4 million in that category. In
Mhm.
terms of vehicle registrations for light duty vehicles based on weight at the end of 2024. And then in each of those, ZEV and non-ZEV categories, they have a few different categories, battery electric, plug-in hybrid, fuel cell, and they break all of those down by numbers and percentages. And then in the non-ZEV, gasoline hybrid, diesel, and other. But
Mhm.
what's kind of cool about this data is that, Sonia, if you go into county, right now it's showing all 58 counties in California. Oh, that's another way of doing it.
Mhm.
Um, so, I guess it doesn't show though.
I think it should update.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I always did it by the filters on that right-hand side by
Ah,
county, but that's cool. Yeah, you click on it.
okay.
So yeah, so this is the population for Sonoma County. So
Mhm.
obviously you've got, 29 million plus registered light duty vehicles in California. In Sonoma County, it's what, 415,000 or so.
Mhm.
And they break it down in the same way. So you can actually compare the vehicle registration data, both by models like Cecilia had done in terms of breaking that down, but also just in terms of the total number of vehicles. It's just an interesting way to I guess put that data into a context of how many vehicles there are in Sonoma County and how many of the total population is battery electric or plug-in hybrid or
Mhm.
gasoline hybrid or whatever category you want to use.
So this is all registered vehicles at this time. So cumulatively, um, what everybody's currently driving. Um, John, do you have something on this too?
You're almost saying what I was thinking, just that through our discussion about EVs, we often talk about sales, and in a way,
Mhm.
they're not so valuable, that information. This information, however, is really what I'd like to see over time, is noticing it because there's a lot of used EVs staying in the market, and
Yeah.
therefore when you have a sale of a new EV, it doesn't really represent what's kind of trailing off with all the used EVs that have stayed in circulation. And I mean, just Ellen and I have, know in the last few months, 4 or 5 people that have purchased a used EV, just kind of suddenly. So
Mhm.
they're hanging out there. The more that sell, the more that will be available for being used. And so
Mhm.
exciting to see these numbers, I think, because they do represent what's actually on the road.
Yeah, so just digging in, I thought that the RAV4 plug-in hybrid was like a super popular car, and there's 5 of them, driving around the county. And then, there's 41 Sparks driving around. That's great. Um, so yeah, these numbers are in a way a little bit more modest and a little easier to wrap your head around, I guess. Um, but over 1,000 volts, over 400 volt EUVs I'm seeing. Let's see. I guess you don't get, let's look down like at Volkswagen and see what you get there. Okay, 2 ID buzzes. Maybe that's gone to 20 now, in, Q1 of 2025. But like you said, John, maybe we should be looking at this a little more and kind of absorbing it because it's cumulative. Brad?
Yeah, thanks, Sonia. If you scroll up a little bit,
Mhm.
um, so yeah, right there. So
Mhm.
for Sonoma County, I mean, there's about rough numbers, 415,000 or so uh, light duty vehicles that are registered at the end of 2024.
Mhm.
Of those, what does it say? About 16,000 are battery electrics. The goal of, and I included it in the chat, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 minutes ago, um, that Regional Climate Protection Agency article, they were talking about it, the county of Sonoma has a goal of 100,000 registered EVs by 2024. The county, and I mean, there's a lot of various interest groups in the county, but
Mhm.
from a either climate change or pollution perspective, the Regional Climate Protection Agency wants to have that number of 16,000 vehicles raised to 100,000, which is, I mean, that's a lot. Um, and I mean, if I was to go on Craigslist in the North Bay, and I can throw this in the chat, and one way to sort vehicles on Craigslist for sale is by fuel type. So they have a sort feature, a sort tool that allows you to sort by electric. Some of the other
Mhm.
fuel options are gas, diesel, hybrid, electric, other.
Mhm. Mhm.
And, there's 106 vehicles for sale in the North Bay region with that electric fuel type option. There's other, because not
Right.
everyone that posts an electric vehicle selects that option, because, people, all sorts of people post on Craigslist in all sorts of different ways. Uh, but I guess my point is that the used electric vehicle market, at least in the North Bay, would really be helped by having a dealership, a used vehicle dealership that's specialized in electric vehicles. And I just haven't seen much interest among the used vehicle dealerships that I've talked to, maybe 15 or 20 different ones, mostly in Santa Rosa. Um, so that
Yeah.
seems like an opportunity to me.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if Ever, which is operating out of San Francisco, is interested in having brick and mortar and expanding to the North Bay or something like that. But for now we have the typical used car dealerships that sell a blended type of cars. I think your other point was just, we started out talking about the percentage of cars that the state of California wanted sold, by dealers. New cars sold by dealers is uh, in 2026. The goal was to be 35%, and that's in terms of whether or not that's going to be enforced. That's being challenged right now. But the percent of sales is not the same as the percent of operating cars. And you're pointing out that, for pure battery electrics, we're at 3.9% in Sonoma County. And then, there's the debate as to whether or not you should combine that
I
with
also
plug-in
threw
hybrids or
another
not.
link in the chat.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Were you guys? I can't hear anything.
No worries. Yeah, so we have a little ways to go, but I think so far we've had only votes that we're gonna potentially increase. Maybe given the interesting models that are coming out and the greater amount of comfort level that people have. And then I think just in summary, we were identifying that sometimes people don't understand that there are pretty good deals out there to be had. And I wanted to bring up the thing that we've talked about in the past around like people who don't buy Teslas who think that they can't charge easily. I feel like that's the biggest myth out there right now is that, they can't buy like, one of these many cars here and get it easily supercharged. And that seems to be like something that we could, I don't know, write a letter to the editor of the Press Democrat about or something like that. It's just, kind of a common myth. Do people feel like that's still an issue?
Yeah, I think it is an issue and it is a myth. I mean, Ellen, I'm not sure where we saw this information, but some information about the number of number of charging ports in California being something like 50% more than the number of gas pumps. I don't know. It's just interesting. The getting real data about it would be interesting to kind of get out there to people.
Yeah, I know Jerry's one of his big points is like we should have more signage or something.
Right.
But there's so many places. I went down to Santa Clara last weekend and charged at a charge point, and it was one of like 5 different clusters of charge points in this kind of multi-business parking lot. It was like, should I charge over here or should I charge over here? Like I had options. They were all level 2s. They weren't fast chargers, but they were fine.
And just, I know we all know this, but just a little bit of planning is such a new concept for
Mm.
gas vehicle drivers, where we're used to just going somewhere and always being able to pump. Just a little bit of planning, and it really helps a lot. It's incredible.
Yeah,
I,
I guess having people's minds wrapped around that. I might have mentioned that like during that Cool Petaluma event, so many people came and went with very ecological cars, either EVs or, passive hybrids or whatever. But I just for some reason talked to 2 or 3 different people who kind of emphasized to me that they felt like their passive hybrid solution was like good enough and they weren't going to make a change to an EV so that they didn't have to think about charging. And I was like, are you sure about that? Because it's really not so bad. And, maybe part of that was like, I know that EVs are more fun. It's like sometimes people complain a little bit about the start stop of the engine in a hybrid, and that goes away. um, and there's just something kind of exciting about driving electric because of how quiet it is and stuff. And I guess, I don't want to push people too hard if they have like strong reasons, but I do think that sometimes it is a little bit of a myth that could be busted. Yeah, thanks for pointing out this list, Brad. I remember looking at it when everything was kind of CVRP sticker related, and so does anyone know, or do you know, Brad, is this all data that's really being pulled from registration now? It's not related to whether you have a fast, an HOV sticker?
Yeah, no, my understanding of this California Energy Commission website is that all of the data is from the DMV.
Okay.
So I assume it's all or mostly registration data. Maybe,
Mhm.
yeah, maybe all registration data. I mean, I guess all of this information is on your annual vehicle registration. So yeah.
Mhm. Does anyone want me to pull up a different county just for comparison? I don't know if I can, but meaning I'm not sure if I know how, but now that I have Sonoma County picked, I'm not
There's
really
a
clear.
filter on the right side.
Uh, oh, it's under your picture, sorry. County. Got it. Well, we could do a combo. Not sure if it does that. Yeah, let's see if we can just add Mendocino to it.
It's probably easier to do it county by county in terms of comparing the data.
Okay, I'll remove Sonoma. All right. 20 prologues. Can't recall what we had before. Come on. There we go. 12 and 11 Rivians. One smart car. Two Fiskers.
I find it interesting that they have the Solterra broken out from the BZX too, but this might just be a 2024 thing. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the Solterra and the BZ4X were the exact same car, or?
Yeah, the Solterra, I think, is a rebadged.
Ah, yeah. So they probably separate them. Um, that's interesting. Yeah. RAV4 primes. I can't recall. You know how I was kind of pointing out that the RAV4 PHEV, it was listed a little differently in the Sonoma data, but maybe that's a county by county registration differences. I'm not sure. But not too many Mach-E's. It's hard to get a sense of like, well, maybe cumulatively, um, there have been a few more Mach-E's in Sonoma County, I guess. Yeah. All right. So Cecilia, should I just move over to the slides at this point?
You can if you want. I still have a map, but
Okay, let's see. Maybe it's not switching for me. I'll stop sharing here. All right, we just have like 5 more minutes in our meeting time. And I did want to bring up the subject of, possible picnic. Is anyone kind of interested next month in working out a picnic location and maybe doing a gathering? Or it would be July 12th. I think, another option is, have we often kind of picked our picnic meeting to be August?
Yeah, I seem to remember the picnic being in August, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Because we could, um, we could try to like do a little bit more to plan ahead for the picnic and think about August again. And one idea I had was that, we could meet at Ives, but also we could meet somewhere where, we'd like to be publicly visible and have access to superchargers. I know that a couple of the parks just have, the individual solar chargers, two people could get like 30 minutes each or something like that. Um, uh, if we tried to think of a venue that was near more superchargers, we'd have to think a little harder. Oh, I have an idea on that. One idea would be there are Tesla superchargers off the Katati Park octagon. I was trying to think of which. Uh, yeah, so there's Tesla superchargers at the fire station location in Katati, which is just right across the street from the park. So the park's a nice spot. And if we do wait until August, we could check in to see if Bernie would offer up his house or if Zeno would offer up his house. But I don't know if Zeno's been very active with the meetings lately. Last year we did meet at Bernie's, and that was really nice.
I think the idea of meeting at some charger that's nearby a park or something, that sounds really fun to me, but I don't know if that's logistically challenging though.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of like the idea too. There's a little Greek restaurant in Katati, and there's a pizza place. And so, if people wanted to do a combination of bringing things, and one thing that I could potentially research is like I could just bring the like the little easy up tent or something. There's a lot of shade in Katati. Actually, I think we'd do fine if we just brought chairs or something like that. Um, so I'm gonna write like an email to the presentation team and suggest that maybe we choose um, the Katati location in August, and that'll give us like lots of time. And if there's more to discuss, we'll put it in the discussion group or something like that.
I think that sounds good to do it a little later because I feel like we'll not be quite ready by July for
Yeah,
our planning.
yeah. And then the question would be, what do we want to do in July? I I can check in with Dominic to see if a visit to Switch is an option to do. And Dominic's other idea was a road rally of some sort, and that would be more like thinking of a destination. Um, do you think we should go to Taco Bell? We've got Taco Bell, and then we've got Amy's Drive-Thru has a couple of charging stations. I just think Amy's Drive-Thru would be kind of fun, but I'm okay with their veggie burgers. I think the only challenge with okay, the one challenge with a place like a restaurant is getting like a big group table or something like that. It may not work as well. And the one challenge with having a picnic at Katati is that, we may not be able to do much in the way of an online version of the same thing. It might be more of a face-to-face only, but we did a Zoom only, so maybe we were ready for a face-to-face only in August or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's probably enough for me to at least start the conversation, and pushing to August, it definitely gives us more time. I like that idea.
Yeah, that sounds great. Cool. Thank you, Sonia, for facilitating and all your presentations.
Oh, good. Thank you,
That
Ellen,
was awesome.
and to John.
Thank you lots.
Yeah. All right, guys. Have a good month, and I'll be around for July, so I'll see you then.
Yay, awesome.
Nice
Bye,
to meet you
everyone.
all.
Nice to meet
Bye.
Yeah, nice to
you.
meet you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.